Am I the a-hole for telling my parents they have to pay for my wedding? I, female 28, am getting married to a pretty great guy, 32. He is a teacher and he is very happy with his decision to become a teacher while I work for a tech company, and we do pretty well financially. We have been together for 4 years and have finally decided to get married. His parents are happy and mine are overjoyed. One small wrinkle is that my parents expect us to have a massive church wedding with a few hundred guests, while we were thinking Jamaica this summer during his time off. We are willing to do what my parents want, but I am unwilling to foot the bill. My mom and I met with a wedding planner for an estimate, $35,000 to $45,000. If we go to the resort we have picked out, it will cost like $10,000, and that includes paying for his parents and nephew to join us. My parents know how much money I earn and are insisting that I pay for the wedding myself. But we have been very clear. If they want to show off to their friends, they can pay for it. We even volunteered to throw in the money we would have spent on my in-laws for the destination wedding we want. But my mom says I'm being an a-hole by denying her the chance to see her only daughter married in front of friends and family. I'm not. I'm just not willing to pay for it. My parents can afford to pay for the wedding. It might just mean putting off replacing their car this year. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. If they want the $40,000 wedding, then they pay for it. Otherwise, stick to your $10,000 plan. In fact, do that anyway. That's what you and your partner want, and this is your wedding. Paying for someone's wedding means you get a say. By rights, that means not paying for the wedding means you don't get a say. Fair's fair. I never understood that mentality. As a parent, I would want to help pay for my child's wedding simply because I love them and want them to be happy. I would not use it as a leverage to force my desires or ideas on a wedding that's not even mine. That's super controlling in my opinion. Most people start there, but assume their kid will think how they think and get frustrated with the difference between what they assumed and what is happening. It's a pretty self-centered way to parent, and only in rare cases where the kids are genuinely using the money in an inhospitable way do I think there is any excuse to intervene. For example, no chairs for a long ceremony when elderly relatives are invited or in-laws get an amazing table up front, but the paying parents are at the rejects table in the back by the bathroom. That sort of thing. Not the a-hole. If it's that important to your parents, then they can pay for it. But beware of any strings that might come along with them footing the bill. They can have the wedding any way they want if they pay for it. The only thing set in stone is the date. I think they are going to find it difficult to get a venue and the rest set up in the time frame they have. My mother wanted a bigger wedding than I was willing to organize, so she did everything. I got my stress-free day and she got to watch me get married. Bonus, she paid for everything. I just showed up. Even if I had $40,000, I would not spend that amount of money of a wedding. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. This is why I eloped. Lol. Honestly, the audacity of your mother to expect a wedding you don't want, and also not want to pay for it is astounding. Do what makes you happy. Don't back down on this. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not giving my newly engaged cousin my grandmother's engagement ring? So, my 22 female cousin Becky, 22 female, got engaged over New Year's. When Becky's fiancé asked my uncle's permission, my uncle offered my grandma's engagement ring. She died when we were 3 because he thought that he had a ring. The ring had already passed through 2 generations to get to my grandmother, so he wanted to continue the tradition. The ring wasn't willed to anyone, nor did she verbally say who she wanted the rings to go to as far as I'm aware. But my uncle thought that he had it because he was the oldest brother. Anyway, it turns out that after my grandma died, in the process of clearing out her flat and stuff, my dad ended up with her engagement ring and wedding band. And over COVID lockdowns, we were having a clear out to see what we could donate to charity shops, and we found the rings with some of my grandma's other stuff in the attic. I asked my dad if I could have the engagement ring because I think it's pretty, emerald and diamond. I paid to have the ring cleaned, replated, and have the settings checked. I now wear the ring fairly regularly because since starting my career after uni, I've started to wear more jewelry because I think it's a simple way of looking more put together and polished. My uncle, aunt, and cousin, we're both only children, have been hunting around their house for the ring since late October, and Becky's fiancé proposed with some custom jewelry. My parents and I didn't know about any of this at the time. Over the weekend, Becky had her engagement party. I wore the ring not thinking much of it, because it went with what I was wearing, a green velvet jumpsuit. Of course, Becky and my uncle recognized the ring right away, accusing my dad of stealing from under them when my grandma died. He was there first, and my parents did the majority of the packing because she lived closer to us, and then accusing me of wearing it just to spite them, and telling me that I ruined the evening and demanding that I give the ring over. I told them I didn't know they were looking for the ring, and if they had mentioned it to me or my parents, we could have told them I had a ring. I don't want to give her the ring because I consider it my ring, as it ended up with my dad and he gave it to me. I paid for it to be resized, /cleaned, /replated, /settings fixed. It's my favorite / most worn piece of jewelry because I like how it looks and the sentimental value of it being my grandma's. Because I don't really remember her, so it helps me feel connected to her. And my grandma expressed no preference to who the ring went to. They argue that Becky should get the ring because she's the daughter of the eldest son. My aunt is the only girl and currently has no children or plans to get married. And Becky got engaged first, so she should get the ring for that. Not the a-hole. If he didn't know he didn't have the ring for 19 years, he doesn't deserve the heirloom. And not mentioning the missing item to his own brother shows his narcissism of being eldest. And finally, no will? Finders keepers, sister. Keep wearing it in good faith. That was my thinking too. They for 19 years didn't realize they didn't have the ring. When you clear someone's house that you love, you remember what items you took and where they are. At least I do anyway. Would be interested in what a court would rule, as the argument would likely be that it's been safely in your dad's possession for years, was given to you by your dad, and you invested in having it made to fit you and be restored. I would be surprised if a ring was suddenly taken to give to another sibling's daughter who has got engaged first. And Opie acquired a ring in good faith as well. It's passed to a third party who actually spent money on it in reliance of the previous owner's representations. Many common law countries will likely recognize Opie as having some equitable interest in the property. Don't worry about such comments, Opie. This is a bit of a no-a-hole situation. With things like heirloom jewelry, especially something that would be a sentimental piece like an engagement ring, it should be discussed about where it goes. Once your dad found it, he should have mentioned it to his brother and they could have made a decision together. The gems could have been split to make both of you girls a ring, or they could have been kept whole and the determination of where it went could have been made collaboratively. You're now in an unfortunate position where you're attached to the ring, and your uncle and cousin are feeling like this was a bit sneaky and underhanded by your dad. Everyone is allowed to feel upset here, and truthfully, I think either everyone is going to need to be willing to compromise or cut their losses, but there will be an added strain to their relationship. You won't be wrong to keep the ring. We found both Grandma's and Grandpa's wedding bands at the same time, that I got cleaned and replated at the same time. I'm more than happy to let her have those rings. That way, her and her fiancé can have a matching set with a sentimental value. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not being able to pay for my parents' mortgage? My parents didn't buy a house when I was younger as my family couldn't afford it, so we lived in a rented house all the time. My dad used to work mostly lowly paid jobs, and my mom never really wanted to work. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18 and started working full-time in 2019 and moved in with my boyfriend. My boyfriend had a deposit for a house at a time and asked me to put down my name on the house and mortgage about half the payment. We bought our house in 2020 and it was relatively cheap. Since I got a house, my parents have been accusing me that I don't help them financially. They kept on persuading me to get a mortgage in my name for them. I kept on refusing as I didn't want to take another mortgage in my name and put myself in more debt. That's if the bank would even allow me to have more than one mortgage. Anyway, my parents got the hint that I won't get a mortgage for them. So, they both decided to work as many hours as they could to qualify for a bigger mortgage. My dad would always call me and guilt-trip me that my mom is only working because I wouldn't help them. To be honest, I felt like even if I applied for the mortgage and somehow got it, then I would have to pay for it as well, which I clearly couldn't afford. Last year, they saved up enough to put down a deposit for a house. They went and bought a new build, which tend to be more expensive as well. They moved in the house last month. Since then, my mom decided that she doesn't want to work and keeps on calling to help them to pay for their mortgage. Both of my parents keep on insisting that I should pay at least half of it, which is about £600 a month. I keep on telling them that with everything going up in price, I barely have anything left at the end of the month, and I won't be able to pay. I don't really feel like talking to my parents anymore. They keep on making me feel guilty for their situation. Am I the a-hole because I can't afford to help them? Now for the top comments. We both know the only reason you're here is because you feel guilty, not because you don't know if you're an a-hole or not. You feel guilty because the people that you owe nothing to are guilt-tripping you instead of doing what they need to for their lives. Obviously, you're not the a-hole, but your parents definitely are. I have no idea to the extent of your relationship, but me personally, I just start hanging up anytime the conversation gets there. Oh, someone's at the door. I'll have to call you back. Pizza's here. Later. I have to take a dump. Bye. And only whenever this group of grown adults that brought you into a world you never asked to be brought into start hounding you about paying their bills for them when you don't even live with them. Just know that they'd be financially using you if you don't immediately leave. It is the way they talk to me now that makes me question whether it is my fault. I have been trying to be strong and not fall for their words for a few years now, but I will try to use your tactics when a conversation gets there from now on. Your mother doesn't want to work and expects you to essentially do that for her. For the love of everything that's holy, never give them money, not even in an emergency. Because after the first emergency, the second will be there soon enough. It is absolutely not your fault. Good parents would never dream of pulling this nonsense on their child. I'm sorry your parents suck, but you need not, and should not, pay their mortgage because your mom is too lazy to work like a normal human being. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother he never deserved to be a father? I have custody of my 12-year-old nephew Dex. My brother is Dex's dad. He and Dex's mom divorced when Dex was 2. When Dex was 4, brother met his current wife Shanna, and when Dex was 6, his mom died. A couple of years later, Shanna got pregnant and went into premature labor. My niece was stillborn, and a hysterectomy had to be performed to save Shanna's life after serious complications. It broke her. She was lost, and in her grief, she attempted to cling extra hard to Dex and have him be the child she could no longer have biologically. But Dex was not Shanna's biggest fan, and he did not want to just sit with her all the time and pretend she was his mom. My brother decided Shanna should adopt Dex. He was so hard on Dex for wanting to hang out with friends or for being in his room instead of around Shanna. She became more and more possessive of Dex. My husband and I noticed, and we stepped in to try and help. But my brother became angry and kicked us out and told us we were not helping Shanna. For several months, Dex was cut off from the rest of the family and went through a lot at home. In the end, he had a huge outburst in school, and CPS became involved. And from there, Dex was removed from my brother and placed with my husband and I. It was supposed to be temporary, but my brother failed repeatedly to change how he treated Dex. At that point, he was treating his son like he was the worst person in the world. Dex told me his dad called him evil after everything that happened with Shanna. He even told him he'd hate Dex forever for not helping her, when he could easily. It seems Shanna eventually did seek help, and my brother decided this was enough to get Dex back, but CPS and the judge disagreed. He then cornered me at Christmas and told me that he deserved to be back in his son's life, and that we were punishing him for parenting decisions that many others would make in his shoes. Meaning trying to force his kid to become his wife's kid, to gloss over the loss of her own child and her ability to have a child in the future. I told him he didn't deserve to be a father after the way he treated his own child. I told him Dex should have always been at the forefront of his mind, that he never should have verbally mistreated him for not faking things for Shanna. I said as a husband, he should have gotten her some real, professional help, and he should have supported his son in saying he didn't want Shanna to become his new mom, instead of calling him evil. Instead of telling him he was disgusted with him or comparing him to a historical figure who was responsible for the deaths of so many people. This actually happened on multiple occasions. I told him he should be ashamed of himself and leave Dex to live a happier and healthier life without him. My brother was furious. He even attempted to confront me again at work. A friend of his actually told me I should have been more understanding, and even if I'm angry, it was too harsh to say he didn't deserve to be a father. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Their behavior was so problematic that CPS had to remove him, and he then repeatedly failed to change his behavior thereafter. It's good Shanna's getting the help she needs, but it sounds like your brother still needs a fair amount of help too. Until then, do what's in the best interest of the child. I hope they don't decide to adopt or foster. They would both be terrible parents. The brother is incredibly cruel and abusive, while Shanna is too fragile and unstable. Having an open or even a history of CPS would prevent you from being a foster care parent, at least in the area I am from. Hopefully, private adoption agencies operate in the same manner. Not the a-hole. It seems to me your brother needs more help than his wife. Ask him to go to therapist. Were your words not polite? Yes. Was it justified? Definitely. That was what the courts ordered him to do when Dex was removed. He never went to a single appointment. Wow, then you're definitely not the a-hole. I can't believe how incredibly selfish and immature your brother is. While I understand your brother is panicked to try to help his wife who has just a miscarriage, forcing a very young child to be responsible for a stepmother's mental well-being is not the way to go about it. I am incredibly sorry for Shanna's loss, and I'm glad to hear that she's getting help. But it's clear that your brother needs help too. I do think that a gentler conversation should be pursued about him getting help. From you, or from friends/relatives that he's comfortable with. That being said, you're not wrong to want to protect Dex from it all. Not the a-hole, but your brother needs help. And maybe Dex needs to be made aware of what's happening, in a way that'd be comprehensible to a 6-year-old. He's 12 now, and he was aware of what was going on with them. His dad used it to shame and talk down to him repeatedly.